So my name is Daniela Andrade. I graduated from A.B. Miller High School in 2012. A year ago I graduated from UCLA. Now I am working in Silicon Valley at a startup called Darktrace, a cybersecurity company doing marketing for their Latin American team. When I heard about the nomination, a group of people were getting ready to nominate. They asked me, they're like, would you be willing to speak on behalf of Nicole Robinson? And I would do just about anything in the world for her. So when someone asked me if I'd be willing to speak, I said, of course. She really shaped me into the person that I am today. She always knew what was best for me before I knew what was best for myself. And I think I owe her the world, so I think this is just a small piece of how I would say thank you for everything she's done for me. Well, she's very real. And I think when you come from an urban place like Fontana where, working families, trying to get through, Hispanic, people of color, it's really hard to find role models. Most of the teachers at our school they don't look like me. They're college educated, they're oftentimes they're white, they're Caucasian, they're Asian, but very rarely do you see a strong woman of color doing something unconventional. And I think for me, as she always taught us that we deserve better than what the world had assigned for us. I had teachers that would tell us, 80% of you may not graduate, and that's just something that you're gonna have to be okay with. And she always was of the belief that she needs to give students more than they think they deserve. So to me, seeing what an impact she was trying to make in this community was what really stood out for me, because it wasn't just enough for her to be a teacher. She really wanted to make a difference in our lives so that we would leave eventually, so we wouldn't fall into that statistic. She wanted us to be more than statistics. So I think that's where it comes from. I told her, I'm in this job, and every day I think, I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna do something and I'm gonna get fired. And she says, well, even if you do, it's not the end of the world. Things happen, you adapt, and I think you'll be okay. Not saying that she thinks I'm gonna get fired, but she always believes that no matter what, there's something better out there for us, and whether we believe it or not, she always does. She was tough. And she was always the person, when I got in trouble, maybe I didn't do my homework, the teacher, that was the first person she would call. She wouldn't call the principal. She would call Ms. Robinson and say, Daniela didn't turn in her homework today. Can you please deal with that? So it's just an authority that when I knew that I was in trouble, and I didn't want to get in trouble with her, because I don't want to disappoint her, because she is the person that is my biggest advocate. So how could she advocate for me if I'm not advocating for myself? So I was always figuring out a way to be my own person, but also living a life that was like Nicole Robinson. So she is that kind of person. You want to be better, and because she's a better person. So I better her, she betters me, and it's this cycle where we're always trying to see what we can do for each other. I think sometimes, for me, I was a terrible test taker. I don't do standardized tests. I just about bombed the SAT. I didn't think that I would get into a good school, because you need a good test score. But the good thing about that is that from dance, I learned self-expression. I learned how to be creative, how to use the fact that I couldn't decide between A or B, because I see the world gray and it's not black and white like math, and there's not one way to get to the answers. So for me, I learned that it's okay not to get the answer right, because the answer that you get wrong, you can shape into the answer that could be right. So, when we're sitting all 4 years through high school, and a lot of kids don't have really a creative outlet, you hear about horrible things that happen to people, parents losing their jobs, and you use dance not just a way to cope, but a way to cope with how you navigate through school. I was a terrible math student, but she was the one that was like, well, you know what? Let's figure out a way that you can learn math your way. And that's not always the way a public school education teaches. They don't care the way that you learn. They care that you give results because that's how they get funding. So when I got to college, college was very similar to that. It's you find your own way, and oftentimes professors don't really care how you get to the right answer. They just wanna, they're there to grade papers. So she used to find ways. She's like, okay, well, you guys grade yourselves. She would let us create assessments, and she would let us grade other people. So it was finding a way to always creative ways to get to the right answer, creative ways to be wrong, and it was okay to not be standard, quote unquote, like the rest of the classes. She's the queen of discipline, let me tell you. I couldn't be. She's like, if she said be there at 5, she really meant be there at 4:30, ready to go by 5. So I think she really taught us, and and this is a little cliche, but in Latin American culture, that's not the way you do things. You show up late, you kind of wing it. There's not really a lot of discipline because it's a very relaxed culture. And when she tells you be there at 5, and I know my mom is gonna think be there at 5:30 because 5 is just a suggestion. You really have to discipline yourself, and you have to discipline the way you do life, and it's doing things over and over until getting to the right place, which I was a straight A student, and when I got to her class, I was terrible. I was a terrible dancer. She will tell you. By the time I got to senior year, I got to a place where I was okay, but it's going home and doing still the homework, because just because it was a dance class, you still had to go home and practice, and you still had to go home and the next day be better. So the discipline really helped me get through class too, because it was that way in math class and it was that way in English, and she really helped us to kind of have a structure in life, because if we wanted to be on dance, we had to have good grades. We couldn't just show up with a 1.5 GPA. If our grades were below, we couldn't be in dance. So we really had to step it up and actually be better and show people that are like, just because we're dancing doesn't mean that we get to slack off. I was like, we still have to be good at everything else. So it was about, yeah.